to our annual Alumni Day, and we have indeed a very eventful year behind us. So what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about what has essentially happened during the last year. And you probably all know that the university went through a fairly serious leadership crisis in last year. We had our president, Professor Beisiegel, who was president for 8 years, stepped down. A new president was elected, but there was some kind of a, I would like to say, crisis in the university, which caused the new president to actually, after this election, step down before he formally assumed office. And so the university was without a president. During this time, I was asked to step in to essentially help the university out for about a year to lead it out of a leadership crisis until a new president is being elected. And the election is now being actually on schedule. And I will, as planned, step down by the end of the year. So you won't definitely see me again in this round. But I think for the university, after this very, let's say, eventful last year or past year, 2019, you have actually we have gotten in a much more stable situation right now. And I think we are more or less on a good track now. Now, just let me introduce to you the current presidential board. So you'll see here in the order of in the picture, Professor Biermann, who is our vice president for education and teaching, Professor Diederichsen, who is the vice president for research, myself, Professor Lossau, who is for construction, digital sciences, Dr. Schiller, who is our senior vice president responsible for personnel and finances, and Professor Kaspar Hehne, who is in charge of international affairs. We also had a change in our foundation council, which you might also refer to as the board of trustees, which is the board we as a presidential board report to. And that was chaired for many, many years by Dr. Wilhelm Krull, actually the general secretary of the VW Foundation. He also stepped down as one of the consequences of the crisis. And we were extremely glad that Professor Peter Strohschneider accepted to follow him in that position. For those who don't know him, he's not only an eminent scientist in medieval German science, but he's also been a very, very influential science politician. He has been for 8 years the chairman of the German Research Foundation. For the Germans, I know this is the DFG. Before that, he was actually heading an important advisory board for the government. He's extremely well connected, extremely experienced, and we are very, very glad that he's now chairing our foundation council. Now, let me just give you some facts about our university. University is obviously, we are one of the so-called mid-sized universities. We have about 30,000 students, and we have actually kept that number more or less for this semester. I will come back to that, about whom are 4,000 international students, we had 550 about PhDs. We had 121 million grant income. We have about 390 professors, and that's on top of that, we will have, there are more than 120, 130 professors of the University Medical Center in Göttingen. And we have about 8,000 plus staff members, which again doesn't count yet the University Medical Center. Now, obviously, the most important event of the last year has been the Corona crisis, which has completely transformed campus life. This is something which, for instance, I didn't expect to happen when I assumed office, but it has really shaped the life of the university since in a very major way. Now, if you look at the campus, you might remember from the old student days how lively the campus has been, how lovely the life in Göttingen has been, how nice it was to meet with friends and colleagues in pubs, in the park, and on the campus, and so on, for excursions, for enjoyable events. This is how the university looked in the summer semester. It was completely deserted. So essentially, what we had to do because of pandemics, Germany went to lockdown in mid-March, which also affected the university. The university was not closed. But what we did is we immediately had to transfer within less than a month's time. We had to transfer the entire teaching activity into remote digital teaching. This was a tremendous effort by everyone, including students, professors, staff members, to make that happening. And just to give you some numbers, we were able to, within a month, to offer almost 80% of all classes in a digital format. In some disciplines, it turned up to 100%. There were obviously many challenges, like practical tutorials and excursions, of which 40 to 50%, but then in particular when the semester progressed and the situation was relaxed a little bit, some of these things could be resumed in attendance, but still this was kind of a very difficult situation for the university. Nevertheless, one can call this really quite a success, an unexpected success. And just to give you some numbers here, this is unfortunately German, but I can tell you this, that what happened, for instance, we had about 500 events per day, which were digitally transmitted. That was essentially summed up to 22,000 events that were happening since the beginning of the digital semester. And also the, for instance, on the Stud IP network, the internet traffic went up by a factor of 4. I should say that managing all this, also the bandwidth, for instance, for the students to interact in this form was a major effort. And I have to thank in particular our computer center headed by Professor Yayapur, our CIO, who have done a tremendous job to make that happening. Nevertheless, we all say what it was a successful semester, but for the students, I think it was a very mixed experience. And what we've done, we've conducted a survey of the students after the end of the semester and asked them how well did they do. And obviously the curricular activity, many of them finished their credits, but in the questionnaire it turned out that there were quite a few problems. I mean, for instance, social isolation, self-motivation, having, let's say, a good learning environment. There were more than 50% of the students reported problems. And that means there were also personal problems, technical problems, other things. I don't want to go through the list here, but it's very clear that the continuation in this line is something which would actually have fairly negative circumstances. So what we were challenged with, first of all, let me just, before I go into this, there were other problems. And one of the problems was that many of the students were dependent on small jobs, like, you know, serving in restaurants, these type of things to finance the university education. And that also was a more or less shut down. And so quite a few students went into fairly serious financial crisis. And I would like to thank you all very, very much, because we asked you for donations. And I have to say that the response has been really overwhelming. We received, in a very short time, we received from our alumni almost 90,000 euro. And I have to say that was really instrumental in helping quite a few students to overcome this financial crisis. We fortunately also then received money from the federal government, which was also not completely enough. But I think your donations has been really make a big effort and has shown that the alumni of our university are really, you are people we can really count on, and I'm very, very thankful for this help you have given us. Now, Göttingen University is actually also quite active in corona research, and maybe a scientific institution. And I would like to just mention that we have institutes who were involved in corona research even before the crisis. Corona research, I mean, nowadays, I think thousands of labs do corona research. At that time, there were in Germany, I think, only 3 or 4 groups, and one happened to be in Göttingen, actually a very good group, headed by Stefan Püllmann. Since then, some of the really leading research labs, like the ones of Matthias Doppelstein, Dirk Görlich, and so on, have actually gotten involved. And the University Medical Center is one of the coordinating centers of a research network. Now, obviously, COVID research is pressing because the pandemic is ongoing. It doesn't show any sign of letting up. So as faster the results come in, the better we can handle the crisis. And some of the successes are already quite visible. Now, obviously, the pandemic is continuing. We expect that we will have to live with the pandemic at least for another year. There's a lot of discussion about the advent of a vaccination, of a vaccine. I'm fairly close to the research, and I think if you're lucky, we have it in a year on a broad scale. And even then, whether the vaccine is really completely safe, I'm not so optimistic as some of the press reports. I think it will take at least a year, if not longer, before we can really rely on a safe vaccine, which is protecting really the ones who are vaccinated. But perhaps I'm too pessimistic, and the sooner it comes, I think we all will be relieved. In any case, we have taken now, in the meantime, a lot of security measures. We've learned a lot, so we have now quite a set of rules which allow us actually to return to a little bit more of reduced presence teaching. So we have distance rules, we have mask wearing, and so on. But with the advent of the pandemic, or with the kind of progression of the pandemic, there's a risk that we may have to shut down again completely if the numbers go up as they are doing right now. What have we done in order to at least try to prevent this? There's one activity I would like to share with you, because this is something we have initiated, which is what I call the campus COVID screen. So what we are setting up is actually screening of essentially all members of the university on a regular basis for COVID infection. This is actually a major effort. What does this allow us to do? It will hopefully allow us to maintain as much on-campus teaching as possible, as long as we can do it. The tests will be, of course, voluntary, but they will be free for students. They will be offered to teachers and staff. And the goals are obviously, number one is avoiding transmission. So we will be able to test participants before class and before events, in particular for the classes which need to be conducted in presence, like the practicals, excursions, but also some tutorials in certain classes for freshmen in particular, and also certain board meetings. The second advantage we'll have is we will be able to embrace our transmissions in the university, and that will allow us to actually validate our protective measures. So we will actually know whether the measures we've taken, for instance, how far people have to be sitting apart from each other, whether the masks worn in class will protect them, and so on. And we have actually already 1 or 2 cases where we know now that an infectious person was present. We have then tested around them, and it turned out that the protective measures so far seem to have held up, and that will give us a lot more security in keeping the university open while the situation around us is not actually very good. Now again, we have a problem here that this COVID screen, we don't have any money. The government doesn't give us any money for this. We have to essentially set this up from our own resources. And we're doing this, we use in-house resources as much as we can. So we have our research labs providing enzymes if you need for the tests. We are volunteers helping out. We have also screening labs from the UMG and also from our research institutes, the Max Planck institutes helping us out. But nevertheless, the whole enterprise, if you think about running something like 20, 30,000 tests per week, costs a bit of money. We're expecting a price tag around 2 million. And again, I must say that I can only appeal to you and hoping that we can actually, with your help, we will be able, I'm collecting donations and I'm appealing to you again to donate for that purpose in order to have our students to have an appropriate semester and to be able to conduct their teaching in an appropriate manner and to really reach their academic goals, but also to at least enjoy to some extent some social interactions, which seems to be is an incredible and, in my opinion, essential element of teaching and of learning. And without social contacts, as you all probably will confirm, the university experience is really not a real one, and it severely affects your capability of learning and studying. Anyway, despite the situation, we were actually quite pleased that the number of new students during the new winter semester has not really gone down. We have 4,200 new students, so the total student headcount remains at 30,000. Now, obviously, these new students need to be acquainted with the university, and this is why, as I mentioned before, we use these measures to have our new, in particular, our first semester students on campus to welcome them. Obviously not under the optimal conditions, but at least they will be able to see real people. They will be able to see the inside of the university. They will be able to see the campus. And so we hope that with this kind of somewhat, reduced presence and reduced attendance teaching, we will be able to go through the winter semester. Now, let me just switch topics a little bit, because despite all this corona dominating our activities, the university has been actually operational. And we had quite some highlights. And I would like to just share in a short order and short succession with you some of the highlights. One is, for instance, showing here that Professor Volker Lipp, one of our faculty members in the law department, has been reappointed to the German Ethics Council. The German Ethics Council is the advisory board to the federal government. And Volker Lipp is not only reappointed, but he's also vice chair of this extremely important board, which advises the federal government on all ethical matters of relevance. We had some other successes. Professor Kaufmann from the Faculty of Theology has been awarded the highest German science prize, the Leibniz Award, Leibniz Prize. He has also been elected to the British Academy, which is also a major honor. Professor Czarnke has received the Marsh Award of the British Ecological Society. Let me just continue. We had also some of our younger colleagues have gotten awards. Christian Titus has been awarded the Outstanding Dissertation Award in Material Science. And also Professor Birgit Abels has been awarded to the Sound Knowledge Musical Meaningfulness in Micronesia. And she has actually, what I should say is that she's been awarded an ERC Consolidator Grant, which is also a very competitive funding scheme in Europe. Now we had then two legal scholars, Dr. Lucia Sommerer and Marie von Falkenhausen, and they received study awards of the first and second prizes from the Körber Foundation, which is also one of the major funding agencies or private funding bodies or award bodies in Germany, major foundation. And this is also, we would like to congratulate them to this honor. And let me just go on. Professor Spiller, one of our member of the agricultural department of food and agriculture, and he has been nominated as a member of the expert commission for the federal government to actually design the future of the agricultural policy in Germany. I guess you are all aware of the environmental issues that are at stake now with the agriculture. They are in terms of environmental compatibility, in terms of sustainable land use, of sustainable agriculture. This advisory board is going to shape or advise the federal government on how to deal with the future, which is very important to all of us. And we are very, very glad that Professor Spiller, one of our outstanding faculty members, has been selected as a member of this committee. A few more activities. So we had actually the first conference of female alumni, of alumni conference, and you see some faces here. Professor Weisinger was one of the speakers. There's also a male one here, so this is not completely, but it was mostly female. I was also invited as a guest. And it was actually a very successful event, continuing an activity we had, for instance, I might say by myself, since I was running a credit school for quite some time. We also had a Women's Careers Network organized some years ago, and that also turned out to be an extremely successful event. We had also our open public lecture series that was started this time. We decided to switch topics very quickly in the summer semester, and it was the lecture, "A Virus Challenges the World," and the ones who can actually see me here, they see that the poster of this is still behind me in my office, suspended to some extent, at least the bottom part of it. And that was actually a very interesting lecture series in which not only biology, but also other aspects of the virus, sociological impacts and demographic issues and other things were discussed. This lecture series was again given in a completely digital format, but it was extremely well attended. Now, there were outreach activities. There was what is called the Pax Expose, which is a job fair. And we were really all quite nervous about this, that this would work in a digital format, but it was actually quite surprisingly major success with major attendance. And I would like to thank the ones who have organized it very much. And it was essentially, in the end, it was attended by more than 1,500 students. I think it was something like 1,700 students. But it's really quite a high number, and showing that this digital format in this case has indeed worked quite well. We had also a competition for entertaining competition for students and researcher startup initiatives, and there was kind of a lift-off competition, which is for founding of businesses, and there was also startup enterprises. It was also very successful. I participated in this. I had a lot of fun, I have to say. And I would like to say that we also continue with virtual events. So we have a conference for peace and sustainability, which will take place later this year. And I think you're all invited to join that. I put the link up here, so if you can copy that, You will be also, I guess, informed with normal alumni channels on the webpage about these events. Finally, I would like to mention that Göttingen has actually become one of the European universities. So for those who are involved, there's been a kind of competitive process initiated by the European Commission to have networks of European universities selected, whom they use as kind of as a special group of universities to shape the future of the German research space. And Göttingen has been elected in this kind of network. And you see here our vice president, for Professor Kasper Hehne, with some of the other representatives from the partner universities. We are partners of a group of 8. And just this afternoon, I was participating in the first discussion of all the rectors, with more than 200 rectors, with the officials of the European Commission to get this kind of European university network on a good track. Finally, despite the crisis and also despite the unfortunate loss of in the competition of the Excellence Initiative, Germany is still doing very, very well. Göttingen is still doing very, very well in terms of research. So according to the Times Higher Education ranking, we are number 11 in Germany. We're number 130 in the world. According to the Shanghai ranking, our departments of agriculture, of statistics, of ecology, and chemistry are rated as number 1 in Germany. We're very proud of this and would like to congratulate our colleagues for reaching that level. According to this ranking, we are number 5 to 7 in Germany and number 100, between 100 and 150 in the world. They don't differentiate that. I would like to mention that one has to take these rankings with a grain of salt. They are using parameter mixes, which one might definitely challenge, and there are some interesting, effects sometimes of mistakes here, but nevertheless, it shows that Göttingen is doing pretty well. Now, I would like, since I'm running late, I would like to just switch over to this slide again. So we were able to award Germany stipends in 2019, and again, we were able actually to award 251 of the stipends in the year 2020. And again, the alumni donations have been instrumental to make it possible. And I would like to thank you all for this. As a final point, we had also a movie of the German TV has been actually being, Göttingen was used as a kind of a stage. And so we had the university was, some of you might know these kind of actors, and this is, has been actually also here happening at the medical center. And finally, the Gänselisel wasn't repaired for those who have actually kissed it. There has been a break. Anyway, and that note, I know I have to stop in time. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I hope you will have an enjoyable rest of the evening. Thank you very much.